MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host. This is episode 282. This is Tom. We have no Jason this week, but joined with me is a familiar face. If you've listened to the podcast, and at least, I don't know, Nate, what would you say? You've been on in the last year or so.
Yeah. We came on. I came on at least once in the last 12 months. It's a sporadic but welcomed event in my life, if you will. So,
well, Nathan Hale, host of the You Ain't Lying podcast. Nathan, I mean, look, it's one thing that I've learned about hosting a podcast, especially around Major League Soccer, where you kind of want to keep up with the news on the day-to-day, week-to-week, what's going on, is guests are a real hard thing to squeeze in, especially with a soccer league that's growing to 30 teams. So guests have been more and more limited as this show has aged. But I mean, look, it's always a joy when I can have a guest on, and it's always a joy when I get to speak to you and Buck and all the Cincy faithful that are always in the mentions, because you guys swarm like bees. It's crazy.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking about that today. We're kind of like, as an Arsenal fan, we're kind of like the MLS's version of Arsenal. like Arsenal's fan base is relentless on X or Twitter or whatever Elon calls it this day. But yeah, man, it's we are a unique bunch. But we warned the league coming in. We were a headache. We sucked for quite some time.
Yeah,
and get a little bit of notoriety. And outside of that team that moved to Austin, we can bark at anybody right now. So,
hey, yeah, that's it. I mean, look, it does probably suck to see your rivals win MLS Cup, but you get to take a supporter shield last year. Baby steps going from spoons to shields. It's all positive. You guys are working towards it.
It's relative, yeah, that's for sure.
But I want to start it off with, obviously, you're the Cincinnati guy, and from the stuff that I've sent over to you, it's not going to be a ton of Cincinnati talk, but I want to kind of get your opinion, your vibes of what Cincinnati's offseason has been like, right? The sale of a Brandon Vasquez, the acquisition of a Miles Robinson, maybe Alvaro Barreal sticking around, and that wasn't totally expected to come into the offseason. So what's the vibes around Cincinnati and the fandom?
I don't know. You give us a little bit of taste of success, and there's two trains of thought. Like, as you said, you can be content with what you've achieved, right? Look where you came from, what you've achieved, be happy. Awesome. But at the same time, that breeds content. And you look at where we're at with the roster, what we've brought in Miles Robinson and a few names I'll mention here in a minute. And it's like, and the goal isn't to be content. The goal isn't to be mediocre. Our ownership, Carl Linder, nobody outside of Cincinnati is going to know him, but the man probably is up at night if he's not successful at something. Like, it will eat at him. That is his MO. So looking at the offseason, Miles is a big get. It's a 1+1 deal, but everybody expected him to at least try his hand maybe in the English Championship or somewhere in Europe. And Albright, Noonan, and the staff, man. Kenny Arena, happy birthday, Kenny Arena. It's his birthday, mind you. But Dom Kinnear, Paul Rogers, the coaching staff we have is arguably the best in the league.
Yeah.
To get Miles to come here, to pay him less than what Atlanta was going to pay him, is a big get. To be next to Miazga and even Nick Hagelin. Nick's the most likable guy in the world. But some of those guys, yeah, that's a big get. You're back line now with Miazga, Ian Murphy, who's on a contract year, but a super draft pick that has panned out well above what most would expect. Getting Kip Keller, like that center back grouping is really strong in front of Roman Celentano, who, in my opinion, little biased, is probably a top 5 keeper in this league, is stout. Outside of that, man, like, we lost, as I've got the CCC on, we were talking about this before we started recording, like, to my right, which would be left on the pod, but, we lost Vasquez. This past year, I say 23, his numbers weren't great, but there was a lot of just uncertainty in our front line. Brenner to start the year, you had Santos, you had Baji, and then bringing in Aaron Bupenza mid-season, who's in a good way, an ego of his own, a catalyst of his own. Like, Brandon, he was always kind of playing catch up, if that makes sense. He had moments of brilliance, but his numbers in comparison to 22, and it was just him and Brenner, his numbers were way down. And that's a credit to Albright to get the 7.5 plus potentially another $1 million from Monterrey and Liga MX, man. If you've seen the highlights, which, men's national team accounts have been pumping, Brandon is doing okay.
He's scoring.
He's scoring some a few bangers. So good on him. But the rest of the roster, man, like we've had a lot of turnover, potentially lost 4 starters. Santi Arias went to Brazil. Junior Moreno's now, as of today, probably going to Saudi Arabia. Barrial, we all expected him to go to Europe and didn't quite pan out, whether that was personally, I think it was an Albright had a evaluation, and he told Barrial, because they wanted to leave this past summer, and he said, hey, buy in for another 6 months. Let's finish out the year. We're going to win something. And we got a supporter shield. Wish it was more, but the number that was always rumored was $6 million. $6 million gets Barrial to Europe, and the numbers that were coming in were 3 or 4. And that's going to be a weird one. He's yet to report to camp. Rumor is he'll be here by the end of this week. He's still posting from Argentina, his homeland, of him running, training, whatever you want to call it. But the man sold his car, didn't extend his lease on his condo here in Cincy. He was done, mentally done. And as a 22, 23-year-old kid who was pretty much promised Europe to not get that, and then they have to come back to Cincy, which is a place he does like. The fan base does love him. Man, that's a big ask.
Is just not to interrupt, because the Barrial point is interesting because, right, like I think there's been plenty of conversation out there about Vasquez and Miles and kind of the state of the team as is. The Barrial point, because it was like almost guaranteed, right? Certain he's going to Europe, certain it's the Bundesliga, it's the championship, it's whoever's looking at him. I don't not think that he's not going to show up and probably participate in whatever it may be. But isn't there a little bit of, I would say, precedent set by Cincinnati that they've been able to sell their stars to Europe, whether it's a Brenner going to the Serie A, whether it's Vasquez, you asked him to hang around a little bit longer and he got his move to a Monterrey, right? Like, is there, I guess, maybe the hope in Cincinnati's front office or whatever, right, that they can maybe be like, you know what, like a move didn't happen, we didn't get a number we wanted for you, but like this summer, like, you continue to do what you're doing, like we'll sell you if the opportunity's there, type of deal?
I think the promise was made, and the fact that it didn't come fruition is a conversational piece. It's the front office between Albright, primarily him, and maybe a little bit Noonan, talking to his player, saying, look, man, we were this close. Just give us what you gave us last year for another 6 months. Show that consistency, that game-changing consistency. Had the highest goal contributions from a really a left-sided player in the league. Was up for goal of the year with a Puxis award. Like the man is obviously better than, I'm not trying to knock it, but better than the league, at least at his age, with a high ceiling. Give us 6 months, and that's on the staff. That's when I lean on the Noonan, the Kenny Arenas, the Dom Kinnears to say, let's get him bought back in, and then in the summer he's gone. In even if it's not $6 million, if it's $4 million, I think the team owes him that. The organization owes him that if he finds a good landing spot that makes sense for all parties, you send him on his way. But it gives Albright another 6 months to prepare for that. We're rumored with another Argentine who ironically came through Sarsfield, Velez, the same academy as Barrial. There's literally photos of them side by side in training, which is ironic. So we've got, maybe that's Albright kind of getting ahead of himself, or at least preparing. But the Brenner thing was not an easy transition. He was rumored to go the window before it fell apart. Nottingham Forest, and there were some intricacies there, i.e. Duncan McGuire, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Not quite the same thing, but there was some pieces involved where a player doesn't have his European cred or his European experience to just step into the Premier League. But Brenner landed in a good spot. He off-season surgery, kind of got hurt as soon as he came to Udinese. But, yeah, I mean, and then the Vasquez thing, Brandon was rumored to Europe just the same. And I think the Mexican heritage, the dual citizenship for Monterrey and Liga MX really played into his favor with going to Monterrey.
Yeah, that helped for sure.
Big time. I don't think you get the $7.5 million for him if he's not a dual citizen. But again, these are good problems to have. It could be vice versa. We could be Toronto. We could be Minnesota right now. Like, there are other questions. We could be Charlotte, like quasi loaning out a DP.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think
it's all relative.
For where Cincinnati was compared to where you guys are now, and the issues that you're facing now compared to the issues you were facing year 1, 2, 3, whatever we want to talk about, right? It's completely night and day. And I think you have to give the credit to Noonan, Albright, the front office. And there's obviously a lot of positive things out there about the rest of the coaching staff and a lot of the guys that you mentioned. So I think you could be in a worse spot than having to sell a player that your management didn't even bring in initially for a few $1 million, and stuff like that. So look, I think you guys are in a good spot. I think you guys are operating and know how to operate as one of the better organizations right now in the league. Obviously that can change quickly with any club, but I think you guys quickly changed it for the positive. And, I think Cincinnati needs to get its credit there. And obviously, look, a supporter shield is a representation that over the course of last season, you guys were the best team on the field. And, we can, that's a whole other argument and whatnot. But I think the supporter shield means a whole lot. And I would be proud if I was a Cincinnati fan, for sure.
We definitely are. We definitely learned how to blow a 2-goal lead multiple times last year. Leagues Cup to Miami and then to the Crew at home. But I think the team learned from that. And I'll say this, this is my speculation, but, Pavel Buka, who's coming in from the Czech Republic, hasn't been announced, but ironically was on the team's roster page today and then got taken down. Our fan base, it was up for a half hour. And somebody on our fan base found the link and was like, "Oh, that's weird." And then Luka coming from, Brazil, but really Argentina, like, I think you're going to see a little bit more possession this year. That was our Achilles heel down the stretch with Columbus. We just seceded the ball to them. We ran out of gas. And when you're seceding the ball and you have nothing in the tank, man, you're ripe for the picking. And that's ultimately what happened in that game. Running
out of gas, and also you have to play guys out of position due to a ton of unfortunate situations. But yes, for sure.
Yeah, Matt's Matt. Matt's Matt. We love him. He's taken a ton of shit this past offseason, literally from the powers that be, from Extra Time and Weeby to any pundit outside of Cincinnati. And I'd ask the question, the honest question, and I'll answer it, that probably 28 out of the 29 teams in the league would love to have him on their starting roster.
100%.
So you take it with a grain of salt. Matt is arrogant,
passionate,
stubborn.
Look, I'm someone from the New York, New Jersey area. There's plenty of Matt Miazgas in this area. It's just it is a guy who cares about what he's doing, and he probably takes it to a level that is extreme for maybe people outside of the Northeast at points. And it didn't like completely phase me or shock me. We've also seen Miazga with the national team and everything like that. But yes, I think talent level, right? Like, I would say every other roster, every other GM, every other front office in the league would probably take Matt Miazga on their team, without a doubt.
So, again, I think he's learned a little bit. I don't think he's learned a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if not the same situation, I think, down the stretch. But mid-season, if somebody's barking at him, Matt's not going to back down. He's going to, he's got the mentality a little bit of me versus the world, and that's a little bit of the New England region, man. Like it's you kind of the name on the back of the jersey is equal to the name on the front of the jersey, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that in the right situation. So yeah, man, it's a few pieces to add the rest of this offseason. We can get off Cincy, but yeah, man, expectations are high. I don't know if it's another supporter shield. I think it's top 3 in the East. I think it's a fair expectation. And then if we can win a Leagues Cup, a MLS Cup, whatever it may be, if we can get one trophy this year, it's a successful season for sure. So
I'll transition off Cincinnati in this sense. You mentioned this situation before, and I'm probably going to say in recent time, this has been maybe one of the larger errors, mistakes, moves, something I feel personally bad about for a player going on, and it's the Duncan McGuire move, lack of move. I guess we're still waiting to get official news on that.
It's not looking good.
No, it's not looking great. I mean, look, I'm sure if it's Orlando City's front office, they're happy to have Duncan McGuire potentially back on their roster for this upcoming season. But look, did Brandon Vasquez just score? Or is that's bad eyesight? Might be
No.
bad eyesight. For the listeners, we are recording this during the Monterrey Comunicaciones game. But for Duncan McGuire, apparently had the move to Blackburn happen. It fell apart. It's happening again. It was a sale. It was a loan. I'm not really going to go into a timeline of what happened, but as of right now, Duncan McGuire's transfer, whether it is a permanent sale or whether it is a loan, whatever officially, I guess, potentially could happen there, is up in the air, and Duncan McGuire could potentially be a Orlando City player once again for the 2024 season. There's apparently potentially a pre-contract that could be signed if the transfer doesn't go through during this window. Tom Bogert's been all over it, so you got to give love to Tom on that. But I mean, first and foremost, when I see this stuff, and I put tweets out about it and stuff, I feel bad for the player. I feel bad for the person because Duncan McGuire, I'm starting to hit an age now where I can call players kids, and he's a kid who is getting his move to Europe. He's getting his move to the English Championship, which is, one of the better leagues in all of Europe. And I'm sure this was somewhat of a dream move for him to be able to, produce enough in his first pro season to then get the move to Blackburn and, try to make that push to a larger league, larger club, larger team, score goals, USMNT, all that stuff, right? And I don't know. I think of it, and I'm not trying to bring it back to Cincinnati, but I think of Lucho Acosta and when he was with DC and the PSG move that fell apart. And it has to be absolutely gut-wrenching and crushing. And look, a move will probably happen in the future. It's not to say that, but you probably get your hopes so high that I can't really see Duncan McGuire having a strong start to his 2024 season. And if he does, then he's a mental warrior, and I give him all the credit in the world. But this is a shitty situation, for the lack of better words. How are you taking the Duncan McGuire news and this potential move that I guess, again, can still happen, but not looking great?
I mean, the question I ask is, didn't Orlando, or aren't they rumored to sign a DP striker?
It's apparently done, right?
Yeah. So, playing time. That gets real tricky. Is he your bona fide starter? Probably not. The situation stinks. To reference to Lucho, that is spot on. I wouldn't say Blackburn's quite PSG, but at the same time, conceptually, it's kind of the same. For those that have watched, Sunderland Until I Die, the Daniel James thing, if you guys remember that, literally came down the wire. There's a paperwork error, and I mean, from what I read, what Tommy Scoops put out, literally they hit save instead of send. How are you? Man, I guess it happens.
I'm sure it does.
It does, but it's still pretty tough. For Duncan, man, he's young, to your point. I don't know. I've never been in a situation. It'd kind of be like winning the lottery. Got a little dog barking, but it'd kind of be like winning the lottery and then having it revoked, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you have to wait 6 months to get the money instead of getting it right away, because it's like, it's look, I'm assuming that the move would come at the next possible window, right? Like, I'm assuming it's like we still want to do business, like we're still going to sign them, everything like that. But uh, I don't know. It's just there's nothing that I can even say like tactically on the field or anything like that, right? Because I know, and you just mentioned, right, the reported DP striker going to Orlando, but you still have to assume that Duncan's gonna be the backup if he's not gonna be the starter until that striker can adapt, get adjusted to the league, whatever. So it's not to say that this is going to completely derail his career or anything like that, but like I said, I worry more about the mental side of it of
Mhm.
like, does this completely just like wipe away any confidence, any like, on field, like I still got it type of deal. And I don't think it should, but we've seen mental cases like this happen.
A lot falls on the individual, and I think it's not necessarily an issue unless he's off to a slow start. If he gets the minutes and he doesn't produce like he did last year, is he worried mentally? Like, what's Blackburn think? Man, I just missed that sitter. Are they
Yeah.
still going to pick me up? If it's not definitive, if it's not
Yeah.
pre-contract, whatever, if it's not official, whatever, like maybe they revoke it. And then what? I mean, you look at Lucho, you referenced that. He went to Atlas, he went to Liga MX, and he was the backup. He wasn't even getting regular run.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took a lot for him, I'm sure, mentally to come to MLS and, a lot on FCC to say you're the guy. But I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to watch, fun to watch. I'm curious, just from a fan, you know, you add another DP striker into the mix, things get really interesting really fast. And then there's expectations around Orlando too. They had their best year ever last year, second in the East. Um, can they repeat? Are they the same team? Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? If the team doesn't produce, maybe the team doesn't produce, but then at the same time, does that affect Duncan? There's so many weird intricacies to it. So as a fan of the league, it's something, I planned again, just like last year with MLS 360 and MLS, just having it on Apple TV, the
Yeah.
access to the games, man. I'll probably watch and finally listen to the schedule thing where everything's not on Saturday night at all times. Like last year, that was kind of the one. It was cool every once in a while, but every week to, if FCC was playing or my team was playing, I'm not watching the other games. Now this year, I can watch some of the other games, be involved in those, and that's just another storyline, another layer to the onion, if you will, to enjoy and kind of see how
For
it plays
sure.
out. Yeah.
For sure. Look, and I think us as also fans of the USMNT, we want to see Duncan McGuire scoring. We want to see the move, right? And it's going to come. It's going to happen. Just stay positive, Duncan, and keep scoring goals, and you'll be getting that move sooner rather than later. To transition into strikers, into forwards in Major League Soccer, and we saw two moves with FC Dallas and the Chicago Fire, making some spending some big time money that, I think Chicago we've seen spend with Dallas. I feel like they just realized that they could spend money. But let's go with the Chicago signing first. So the Chicago Fire record spend for a striker from Ghent, Hugo. I'm gonna go
I think it's
Kuipers.
Kuipers. Yeah.
Kuipers. Okay,
Kuiper.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you
Yeah.
there with that.
Close enough,
Uh,
yeah.
He's a in his prime 26-year-old striker, Belgian striker. And I mean, look, if you look at this dude's goal scoring rate, it's incredible. You look at his last 2-3 seasons with Ghent, it's incredible. He's won golden boots, he's won trophies all over Europe. This is literally like the ideal, I think, MLS striker signing that you would want to see from your club, any club, whatever it may be. And I mean, I make jokes all the time at Jason about the Chicago Fire organization, but this was actually an amazing move by the Chicago Fire organization in my mind. I mean, I can't sit here and say I watch a ton of the Belgian league. I can't sit here and say I watch a ton of Ghent. But notable club, notable league. We've seen a lot of MLS players go to Belgium and find success and vice versa, right? This doesn't seem like a move that can really fall apart to me unless, we get one of those odd off field types of cases. But I don't know. Did you have any different thoughts about it?
I mean, the player profile from the homework I have done, he's not a Bouanga. He's not a self-creator. He's more reliant upon those around him to put him in good spots, create for him. I worry a little bit about that with Chicago's setup, like what can Shaqiri give him, that kind of stuff, and some of their midfield as a team that often doesn't have a ton of possession. But, the player profile overall, his history in Belgium, I think it was really a goal contribution every other match is really what it plays out to over his time frame there. The question I ask, and this isn't really, I'm not really asking you, but it's something just as a point of reference, is where is MLS in comparison to the Belgian top tier? A lot of these European leagues, you look at the Bundesliga, we look at, France, if you will, La Liga, your top teams, we use the term farmers league, as MLS is a league built on parity. Your European leagues really outside of the Premier League and maybe the Bundesliga, man, like they're very top heavy. It's 3 or 4 teams. He's coming from one of those 3 or 4 teams in Belgium that is the best, one of the best teams year in and year out in the league. Do those goal numbers stack up? We're going to find out. Chicago does not have the best history, at least recently, on hitting on DPs and spending money. They've burned some cash. You referenced Dallas. We'll see what plays out there. But yeah, man, I don't know. If I'm a Fire fan, I love it. We're spending money. We're trying to be better.
You have to be excited.
Yeah. You have to be excited. But I don't know. I look at it and I look at Shaqiri, and I've said his name a couple times, but he's the highest paid player in the league. And how could that money be spent differently amongst the roster? And you look at the crew. Great example. You got Cucho, and obviously Rossi, but you spread it evenly across the team as best as you can within the roster mechanisms. Seems to go a lot further than heavy weighting on 2 or 3 guys, your traditional DP approach. So we'll see what the Fire do. They got my boy Gutman back. He's back home. So I'm rooting for him. I'll watch him. But, could Kai Kamara give you the same goal contributions if he got everyday minutes right now than a DP? I don't know. I don't think that the numbers are that drastically different, as crazy as that sounds. So just my thoughts.
No, look,
but
for sure. He has to come to MLS and he has to adjust. And the profile is great. I think the numbers are great, right? He has 66 goal contributions in 90 games for Ghent, right? Like, it's ridiculous. It's an amazing production. He's been a Golden Boot leader. He's won trophies in Europe. All of that. He's bringing that with him to the Fire. And like, to your point, you have to be excited if you're a Fire fan that this is the type of move that we're bringing in, and that at least the club's trying to spend to get better, and not just going after loan deals or I guess signings from Lugano, their sister club in Europe and stuff like that. So you have to be excited. I know Jason was when the news dropped, and he was texting me all about it. But you like to think that a club record signing will produce, and there's cases that it has in Major League Soccer. There's cases where it has, and for me personally, you just hope kind of every club finds a little bit of that positive momentum. You want to see better play, more talent, all that stuff across the league. But just to quickly transition to the Dallas signing that I also mentioned, they went out, they signed Petar Musa. I know probably less about him than I did the Chicago Fire signing, to be honest with you, but profile, slightly different. I think slightly different kind of player. He is a full Croatian international. Again, a guy who's played at Benfica. He's played in the Bundesliga. He's scored one trophy. So similar profile in that sense, but I think on the field, a little bit of a different type of player. An interesting move to me, bringing in a DP striker when you already have a DP striker in Jesus Ferreira. And, I haven't really talked on the podcast that much about his blocked move to Russia or anything like that. I'm not going to get too deep in that. But now you have two DP strikers on a team where you don't really play with two strikers up top. And it's maybe Jesus falls back a little bit. I don't know, but it seems to be a little bit of an interesting case down in Dallas. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Because I see you thinking over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think formationally, they're going to have to change. You don't spend that kind of money, and you're not going to leave Ferreira on the bench. He's not going to be your first, your 12th man, if you will. Ferreira has shown the ability to be a little bit more of that creative nine, off the ball, a little bit of his passing skill, where Musa may be more of your clinical finisher, your fox in the box type. Again, similar profile in the sense he's not really a true creator. The pedigree's there, man. Anytime you get a bona fide starter from Benfica, who's, again, arguably the best club in Portugal, consistent Champions League club, there's something to be said for that. It's unique to see Dallas finally spend some money rather than developing their own. I mean, their history is the academy, from Reggie Cannon to Ferreira, Chris Richards. I mean, there's a whole list down
Weston
the line.
McKennie, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're finally spending some of that cash. Something different, man. Like, if Dallas is trying to get over the hump and really be, again, super relevant in the West, which I think the West is up for the taking,
100%.
Especially with the way LAFC's been this offseason. We'll talk about Seattle in a minute. Maybe this is their play, because Ferreira's not going to be there forever. You mentioned Russia. I think if it was any other league at that money, he's gone.
He'd be gone, yeah.
So maybe they're just anticipating the summer, and maybe something coming in the summer, and then you've already got the backup. You've already got the backup plan or the replacement. And then with Ferreira being a homegrown, I mean, I know he's a young DP, but he's a homegrown. That money applies a little bit differently within the league and roster rules. They can spread that amongst the team. I mean, we saw with Columbus last year, you can be upper middle of the road until the summer. You make the few right moves with the right coaching, and you go from good to great. So maybe that's Dallas's plan, man. Sell Jesus in the summer and spread that money amongst the team, bring in defenders, whatever it may be, upgrade that back line. Lots of options, but as it stands right now, they're at least at a bare minimum probably fifth or fourth in the West, if not second or third. So
I don't disagree with that. Look, I think I talked to some people within the Dallas area and stuff like that, right? And I think that the plan is Jesus isn't going to be around for the long term for sure, and that this kind of feels like the move where they can potentially play together a little bit before Ferreira gets that official move, or I think that's probably more what the hopes are down in Dallas rather than anything confirmed. So I agree with you there. I don't always love the bring in the replacement when you still have the guy on the roster, right? And they are different player profiles. They do probably complement each other pretty well, but again, I think my mindset goes more towards it's nice to see clubs spending money and continuously breaking their record signings and doing all of this, because it means that they're progressing forward with the league. For everything that I know, you and a few other Cincinnati fans love about Lionel Messi and the Inter Miami stuff, right? They're progressing forward with the spending going on in the league and trying to keep up and trying to stay competitive across multiple competitions. And that's just what record-breaking striker deals kind of just show to me at a super high level.
I think if you sell enough pink jerseys and spread it across the league, everybody gets an extra DP, right?
That's it. That's the hopes, right?
Right? God, man, if only every team could release their jersey a month early just for jersey sales. What a world we live in. But different strokes for different folks. Yeah, I mean, I agree, man. To bring in players of this caliber, plucking from not the 1A tier leagues, but the 1B tier leagues, Belgium,
Yeah,
Portugal, things like that. Yeah, it's definitely growth for the league. We, especially this past offseason, we all kind of thought it would be a little faster than it is, but MLS really since day one has learned from the NASL days, even the USL days to an extent, that like slow and steady wins the race
yeah,
versus sprinting to the finish line and then running out of steam in that last couple of miles. So I like it. It'll be interesting to see where Dallas is at if the strike partnership and if they find a way to make it work on the field. If they're on fire going into the summer, what does Dallas do? Do they sell Jesus, or do they say, "Hey, man, give us a la Cincinnati, give us another 6 months.
yeah.
We got a shot at something." That dynamic's going to be really interesting. But Dallas, to see where they're at versus the past few years, is pretty solid. Just Texas as a whole, man. Houston, Ben Olsen doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Ache gets healthy. I'm not a huge fan, just the U.S. men's national team Mexico rivalry, but I don't want to
Yes.
ever, I don't want to root for a player to fail unless they're, in Columbus or named Zella Ryan. But looking at that, yeah, man, it's a good time to be a Dallas fan, a good time to be a Fire fan. There's true optimism more so in the past few years, and that's easily said. So
For sure. And you mentioned, the state of the Western Conference, and I talked about it a little bit on the last episode with Andy Diosa, who does a great job covering soccer out in the Los Angeles scene. But the interesting thing is the Western Conference is kind of up for the taking, because I do think last season was a very bad year for the Western Conference. I think talent wise and production wise and all of that. But on top of that, it's kind of like there's a lot of clubs in flux, and two clubs that historically have been very good that went out and made some signings this offseason. LA Galaxy signing Gabriel Peck from Vasco da Gama, Seattle Sounders signing Pedro de la Vega from Lanús. I mean, two young DP signings. You made an interesting point to me before we started recording that I would love for you to toss out to the MLS Aces listeners here about DP wingers and high spend wingers.
yeah, I mean, I asked you, when was the last time a DP winger, a big spend, really hit in MLS? And off the top of my head, man, like I'm stretching a little bit. You
I mean,
mentioned when
Toronto would probably, be screaming at you for this one.
I mean, yeah, there's exceptions to every rule, but
Yes.
consistently, if you compare it to attacking mids or strikers, um, really the comparison isn't even fair. There's not a ton. You know, it's been shown tried and true that building a spine through this league, your striker, your midfield, your center backs, and your goalkeepers really are the path to success.
Yeah.
And having a player on an island, a winger, for example, without the rest of the team, that player is still on an island. Toronto's a great example. They spent a ton of money on two players that without the rest of a team struggle to produce.
Without a connecting piece to
Yeah,
that,
yeah. Like you can have all the talent, but if it's way out wide, nobody can get them the ball, or if you can't create possession or play on the break, press, whatever it may be with the rest of the team, that player is simply a wasted skill set. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's the Galaxy. You got Puig. They've got some pieces in place to create. Does Peck get them over the line? I mean, losing Chicharito, okay. I don't think that's a huge loss at this point. They really didn't have him last year with his injury.
Fair enough.
But it'll be interesting, as really this is the first time in the last since LAFC came into the league that the Galaxy have a chance to be the better team. Because LAFC, they got Bawanga. They have players if Vela comes back. but there's blood in the water.
For
And
sure.
can the Galaxy capitalize on that in signing a $10 million winger out of Brazil? Maybe that play, but there's still some holes in the game. It'll be again. I keep saying it'll be fun to watch, but it, just that rivalry amongst the two, it'll be cool. And I'm curious to see what the or what LAFC does the rest of this offseason, because they've been this past week they kind of made some noise, but up until then they've been pretty quiet with things going on. So
Yeah, I mean, look, LAFC, right? The stars of Major League Soccer before Messi came around, right? Loaning out Mario Gonzalez, Stipe Buke. They also sold Felipe Krastov, or sorry, it was a loan termination for Felipe Krastov. But last few days, last week or so, they've been able to bring in a little bit more talent. They've brought in a left back from Mexico, Santos Laguna, on a U22 initiative deal, Omar Campos. They've also brought in Thomas Angel from Atlético Nacional. And then they also brought in that like 17-year-old kid, David Martinez, on a U22 deal from Monogas. I think he's like one of the most highly touted like young South Americans in the world right now that LAFC were able to lock down. A lot of positive things, right? A lot of things for the future that I think LAFC are probably hoping for. But to me, it's the point that you said that this isn't these aren't moves that are getting LAFC back to MLS Cup for a third straight year after the massive departures that they've had to the club, and it leaves opportunities for the Seattle Sounders and now their post Nico Ladero era with personally a winger that excites me more than Gabriel Peck. So I don't know. I think the Galaxy could be the big dogs out in LA. I'm not going to sit here and say the Western Conference. I think Seattle, we could see a major bounce back from them into, I think, probably being the class of the Western Conference in 2024. But there's a lot of question marks, and the winger point that you made really is sitting with me, because it's like, what's a good winger? What's a good DP winger without a high class striker or a high class attacking mid to kind of connect the pieces and not just isolate? And I think it's something that Toronto didn't have, and maybe it led to a little bit of a downfall last year with the Insigne and Bernadeschi moves. And I think Seattle has the base for that. I think Seattle has the basis for success as well. LA, like you said, Puig is there, but I know a DP striker's been rumored, been reported, all that stuff. If they can get that, then I think that propels the Galaxy even further. And I don't know, the Western Conference is just such an interesting conversation to me, because it's like we also don't know what we're going to get from St. Louis. We don't know, is kind of what we saw a second half of Sporting Kansas City last year. Was that a fluke? Where the Eastern Conference is, we know the top dogs in the Eastern Conference. We know your boys. We know, like we know Orlando. We know stuff like that. But it's just, what is the West going to bring? And I don't think anyone knows that at this point.
I'll paint you a picture, and this is something that will be really interesting to watch. So we referenced Toronto and what Bernadeschi and I can't. Why am I drawing a blank? Was their other ridiculous DP?
Yeah.
Insigne, yeah. Like, those guys have never really been in a position truly where they've struggled in their career, where they've been the worst team or really subpar. And we saw them implode from the inside out. Like, we all watched that as fans of this league. LAFC with Bouanga, who wanted to leave. Bouanga did not want to stay. LAFC put a hefty price tag on him, which is arguably fair. But this past winter window, the money wasn't spent for whatever reason. Like, globally, it just wasn't spent the same. What if LAFC comes out of the gate, man, they're sluggish. They're just not that good. What if they do re-sign Vela and Vela is 35, 36, oft injured, and they don't produce? What if this 17-year-old is a 17-year-old in LA? Sounds like a bad combo to me. Chirundolo, who's really only been a coach, 2 years? Like, professionally? Yeah. Like, what if things go sideways and you've got LAFC's never truly struggled. They've always been, until Miami came, what Miami is now, that LAFC's been the golden child. They've been the, hey, look at me, the 32-52, the Will Ferrells, the celebrities in the stands. What if this team's mediocre and people, the 32-52 will show up, but what if the rest of the stadium doesn't show up? What if it's like the Galaxy? They draw, but do they have the ambiance, the atmosphere? It'll be really interesting to see how that fan base, that organization responds. And if they get off to a slow start, which is a very realistic possibility, how's that year play out, man? If they're
Yeah.
shit, pardon my French, they get the summer and Bouanga's like, man, get me out of here.
Yeah.
I kind of hope it happens just from a perspective of a fan, but I don't know, man. It's for the first time, the West, in the time that I've really followed the league, there isn't an outright big dog.
Yeah.
There's dogs, but no big dog. So
Exactly. Who wants to take it? And look, that's also an exciting storyline to follow, is who's going to step up, who is going to pull what St. Louis pulled last year. And look, I know obviously things didn't work out for them in the playoffs, but St. Louis was like, okay, no one else wants to come do the thing. Where's the Seattles, the LAs, all these clubs we've heard about? And they went out and obviously had a great historic inaugural season. And I think they should build upon that. But, MLS is an interesting beast, and year to year things change and all of that. I want to quickly, I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to quickly transition back into the Eastern Conference and talk about Charlotte FC, because they've made some news in recent weeks with the departure of a loan from Karol Swiderski to Hellas Verona in the Serie A. Kamil Józwiak, another DP winger that we can say probably didn't work out in Major League Soccer. He is headed to Granada in Spain, opening up a DP spot. Like I said, that's an official sale. And then today they announced the departure of Vinicius Melo to I can't think of the European league. It's not a top of the line European league, but departure of Vinicius Melo, opening up a U22 spot for Charlotte. So giving Dean Smith really three kind of roster designation spots to play around with. I mean, I love my people out in Charlotte. A lot of great guys and gals that follow the podcast and will interact and everything like that. But this all seems a little late in the transfer window to open up these spots for Dean Smith to then have him pretty much not really be able to do anything with it, unless you're kind of just hanging on for a summer move and bring in some DPs then. I don't know. I know some deals can still get done, but to me, I was like, I really like Dean Smith. I like bringing him in if he can. He's the type of manager that can kind of regulate, I think, the culture and the organization and kind of make things his and show how things, quote unquote, should be done and everything like that. But I think if you're a Charlotte fan, you probably want to hope to see success as soon as possible under him, because the last few managers haven't worked out well. So I don't know. It's I don't know if you're setting up Dean Smith to be successful uber from the jump. He's even made comments about the roster and the talent on the roster already, and losing Swiderski kind of in an ugly ending to his time in Charlotte, and then Józwiak not really working out, and Melo having all this hype and he didn't really work out. It continues to just be a little ugly for me in Charlotte, if you ask me from the outside looking in.
I'm going to ask you, as you were saying that, how raw do you want me to be about Charlotte right now?
You can go for it.
What are they doing, man? What are you doing? Dean Smith, sure, European pedigree, was if you're looking at like 20 teams in a year in an English league, he was team 10 or 11. He could keep a team from relegation. Did he win anything?
For
sure. Yeah. Swiderski was the only player on that roster that ever scared me as an FCC fan. Well, the one guy you had to mark, the one guy that out of nothing could create something. And then he's not Dean Smith's DP. He's gone. You look at the ownership, and I mean, I'm going to be blunt. The ownership's the same ownership as if you follow the NFL, and I don't want to cross too much, but and the Panthers are a joke right now. Like, what kind of confidence do you have in that, from that standpoint? They are like FCC light when we came into the league with making mistake after mistake after mistake. And then here we are trying to press reset. You bring in we brought in a Pat Noonan, albeit he wasn't a head coach yet, but he knew the league extremely well from playing, from being with Philly, a proven, Jim Curtin protege, the whole nine. We bring in Albright, again, the Philly connection, a GM that played in this league, men's now, knows the U.S. game. They're bringing in Dean Smith, who, how'd Wayne Rooney do in this league? How'd Patrick Vieira do in this league?
Patty did well. Patty did well.
Patty did okay. Okay. You're a little biased. Patty did okay until he got fired.
Moved to France. Same thing.
He did okay. But the English connection from a head coaching standpoint, like we referenced the wingers, like it's not a tried and true perfect match. They're just different. So from a Charlotte standpoint, if I'm a fan, I will say this: their media coverage, their local media coverage, what they do is awesome, especially from where they're at in the league. They've been in the league a few years. Like their fan involvement is
killer,
top notch. But on the field, it's just so many question marks, top to bottom.
100%.
What kind of product are they going to roll out in a month, 3 weeks? Like, who's your starting 11? And where are you getting goals? What's your play strategy? What's your formation? Are you a possession team? Are you a counter-attacking team? Are you relying on one or two players as your goal scorers? Are you trying to balance it across the team? There's just so much there. And the Dean Smith style of play, as somebody that watches a lot of English football, is more of like a conservative bunker down. Like, that's not fun to watch.
No, and I don't think, right, like, to me, it's more like, I don't think Dean Smith's going to bring this, innovative new, style or idea to Charlotte, right? I think it's, to me, the only reason why I'm for it, and I think it makes the most sense, is they had so much drama with Miguel Angel Ramirez and Christian Lattanzio. We're gonna play not the most exciting soccer, but I know what a Premier League level club is, and Charlotte does bring it all off the field, the training facility, everything like that. I'm gonna bring you the most stable type of shit, and we're gonna build this until it is a stable club for the next 5 years, hopefully, right? That's the only reason why I'm like super for the Dean Smith move. I think it can be successful probably at its peak, but what does success look like? Exactly. Is it a supporter shield? Is it a Leagues Cup trophy? I don't know, but I've said this. Charlotte's a mess a little bit to me.
I'll get another jab in just because that's fun. Managers with the last name Smith in Major League Soccer right now, boring, uncreative, and you're middle of the table. You're consistent, but what are you really accomplishing?
No.
I'm just saying. So I like it from a stability standpoint, from like building a baseline, absolutely. But what's the goal? Is the goal to just compete? Is the goal to win a trophy? And then you bring up the point, man, the European window's closed. Now they can still buy. FCC, to reference Ursa Mascara last year, we hit lightning in a bottle and we got a loan of arguably one of the top 3 or 4 center backs in the league last year. Like, that was 100%. A home run. Yeah. That's probably not going to happen for the next decade. But looking at that, they can still add. They can add from South America. But is that Dean Smith's wheelhouse? No.
No. And look, if you're looking at what Charlotte's done historically in their 2 seasons, I mean, I know Enzo Capetti was a DP signing from South America, but most of their signings come from Europe, come from the European leagues, whether, it's a veteran from the league or a Karol Swiderski coming in, right? Like, most of their signings and their knowledge and history has been European signings.
And Capetti could still leave. I mean, that rumor is out there, and that adds a bigger, like, he's their best player right now on paper. That adds another layer to what's the game plan. You get a match in 3 weeks, and you say maybe the summer is the time, like they're just going to kind of see what they've got. Maybe that's the play. They've had such chaos their first few years in the league. Maybe it's you roll the dice for the first 6 months until May, June, when the window opens, and see what you've got and what you want to keep, and then you add from there. That makes a lot of sense. It's the smart play long term. It sucks as a fan.
No, 100%.
You're watching a game with 15,000 people in a NFL stadium that holds 60 plus with you're down 2-0 for the first 6 months of the season in the Charlotte Heat. Sounds like a terrible time.
Hoping Capetti scores,
hoping he's still on the team.
Fair enough on that point.
So it's but if that's their plan, it does make sense long term. Get the stability, build from the ground up, press reset, clear house, all those things that they realistically need to do at this point. But as the fake Queen City, I hope they struggle a little bit, just for fun.
You guys with Cincinnati, just have you pick your rivalries with everyone. You're like Queen City rivalry, Columbus rivalry. It's just everyone's an issue. I love it.
It's Ohio versus the world, really. There's a saying, the state of Cincinnati.
Yes,
it's true. So yeah.
All right. Well, Nate, I always appreciate you coming on, and there was a lot that has happened in the 2 weeks we haven't had an episode. So to the people watching, listening, apologies. It's been a wild off season. It's been a wild 2024 personally for Jason and myself. So episodes are going to come more regular. We actually have our previews for both conferences in the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. And, Nate, I have to have you on back again before the 12-month mark hits, but tell all the people watching, listening, where they can find more of your Cincinnati takes and league takes overall.
As someone that also has a somewhat sporadic podcast over the last 6 months, just due to life and, careers and all that kind of stuff.
Very fun stuff,
You Ain't Lying podcast. We've been around 4 years now. Who knows? We really don't care. FC Cincinnati based, a lot of idiotic takes and us bantering with one another. I'm Nino1 on X or Twitter. Not that matters, but man, I love this game. From Europe to waking up at 6 o'clock on a Saturday to watch Eredivisie or whatever it may be, the Scottish Premiership. Man, this sport has really changed my outlook on so many things. And I love it. I love this league. I love the way it's growing. We really didn't hit on Miami. Maybe we'll save that for next time. I have a gut feeling how that one's going to play out. I like to reference them as AARP. But man, if you can't even buckle up in the preseason, granted you're getting paraded around like a circus, but enjoy going from Miami to Seattle to Minnesota to, the different landscapes from 80 to 15 to sideways winds in Seattle to, 90 degrees and humidity in Cincinnati in the middle of July, whatever it may be. It's a different league and I love it for it. I love its fault points. So, man, I appreciate having me on. Always fun. I love you. So, let's look forward to a good 2024 for both clubs. You guys are going to be good. I think NYCFC is going to be sneaky good as you guys kind of gel. It's going to take a few months, but
I was all for you shitting on Miami. I didn't want to force you into it if you didn't want to do it, but I'm glad that you got
it
that.
It comes naturally on that one.
It comes. I get it. I don't think Miami's going to be as bad as everyone's hoping that they're going to be, but
there'll be home field advantage in the East when it's all said and done. But yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. They'll win. They'll win something. I feel like in 2024, but whatever.
A discount on McDonald's coffee.
What did you say?
A discount on McDonald's coffee.
I mean, look, if my grandparents are still doing that, then then they Messi and Suarez can join right next to Mr. and Mrs. Sweezy up there.
Yeah.
But look, NYCFC, I don't know, man. A young team again. We're getting more city football group signings that are technically through us, and I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic, but still, Talis Magno needs to show up. But that's a whole other conversation for NYCFC.
Just wait till Man City gets relegated from all these punishments, and you guys get Holland on a loan on a TAM deal or something ridiculous.
I'll take it. Give me De Bruyne at the end of his career on loan. I'll take it. That's fine. But no, bro, it's all good. It's always good having you on. I appreciate you coming on last notice to get this in. I'm rooting for Brandon Vasquez, but not for Monterrey. So if he scores, I'll be happy. But if not, let's hope Monterrey loses. And good luck to Cincinnati and good luck to you guys at U8 Line for the rest of the season.
Appreciate it, bro. Until next time.